Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Mad Mouth. Glad to have my Wednesday night partner, Steve Balestrieri. Good evening, Steve. How are you?
Every day's a holiday, my friend. I'm glad to get to talk some football with you. And we've had, like every other week in the NFL, nothing's going on, right?
Well, that's true. Well, we don't have a Thursday night game to prepare for, so we won't get to that. We're going to start off with college football, believe it or not, something we don't do a lot. But when the name Nick Saban comes up, you have to lead off with it, and that's exactly what we're going to do. The SEC got rocked when Nick Saban came down with COVID-19. If that wasn't bad enough, his athletic director, Greg Byrne, did as well. So maybe the Southeastern Conference, Steve, better wake up a little bit here because all of a sudden COVID-19 has bit them and bit them really well.
Hit them right in the behind. And, with Saban in Alabama, they have a huge game this weekend against number 3 Georgia. So that's going to be very difficult for them without him there.
Yeah, I'd be hard-pressed to believe that they may not cancel it or not. I don't know. We have a few days to go before that situation.
True.
They have to absorb the sting of this one for sure. And that's what, all right, so Nick Saban gets hit with COVID-19. That to me, I don't know if that's as big as Magic Johnson having HIV, but it's a really, really, really big shockwave for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's like one of, if not the biggest name in college football in terms of coaches. So, I mean, that's going to get people to stand up and take a little bit of notice, especially, like I said, they have a huge game this weekend. And if everything holds the way it's supposed to, he's not going to be there.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So, well, Nick Saban, like what happened to Donald Trump, COVID-19, they don't care whether you're big or small. It's going to get you anyway. So, hope you get well, Nick. But at least everybody when they talk about COVID-19, taking it seriously. I want to play. I want to make sure the players play. Okay, Nick, I understand. Now you got to stay home and quarantine for a while and stay out of harm's way before this thing bites you badly. So all right, well, let's go back to the NFL. Cam Newton is expected to join the Patriots on Thursday. They need him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's supposed to be back. I believe Stephon Gilmore is supposed to be back as well. So that's huge news for them because if the game hadn't got canceled last week, they would have been out there without their best offensive and defensive player. So this is big news for the Patriots. Newton is expected back. Today they didn't actually hold a practice. They just had player workouts. So none of the media was allowed to be there for that. So, we'll be watching tomorrow to see if, in fact, Newton is there. But that's big news for New England. They were averaging in the games that he played about, I think, 28 points a game. So.
Yeah, well, everybody got an idea what Jared Stidham and Brian Hoyer would have worked, and I would think that Bill Belichick, to me, would have been looking at 5 or 6 wins had he have stayed with that combination until Cam Newton came to New England for sure. So we'll see what happens, see how it plays out. So let's talk about the New York Jets cutting Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, the Jets, I mean, boy, they, once again, the Jets, they paid $27 million guaranteed to Le'Veon Bell, and he played in 17 games. And, apparently the news came out they were trying to trade him. And they didn't get any takers, supposedly. And, of course, everyone always says this whenever somebody's name gets bandied about. Supposedly the Patriots made a run for Le'Veon Bell last year. I don't know whether that's true or not, but like I said, that's always the big thing. And supposedly they're looking at him too. They have so many running backs now. I don't see where they would go for Le'Veon Bell, but hey, I've seen stranger things. Belichick loves his veterans, so would it be out of the realm of possibility for them paying Bell like the veteran minimum and having the Jets pick up the rest of the tab for the season?
Right.
I could see them doing that. But honestly, they don't really need Le'Veon Bell. Actually, the team that needs running backs the most are the New York Jets.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, you have a problem named Adam Gase who didn't think they needed that particular one. So, boy, that's another story.
He's the next guy that's going to be hitting the unemployment line, I believe.
Yeah, not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But I think a place where Le'Veon Bell does fit, though, is actually the Arizona Cardinals. Can you imagine if you stuck Le'Veon Bell on the same offense? I mean, Kenyon Drake is pretty good, but DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Kyler Murray, oh my goodness, the Cardinals would be dangerous. And more importantly, they let David Johnson get away. They traded him for Hopkins, so I think Le'Veon Bell would be an ideal fit in the desert.
Yeah, and he'd probably love to go there. He'd go back to a winning team. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are definitely dysfunction. All right, so let's talk the NFL. They won't hold a Pro Bowl at the end of the 2020 season. Well, why risk it for that? But my gut feeling is one of the reasons that they won't be holding it is you don't know how many games are going to get moved back and shoved back so they can use that extra week as a filler type of week if they needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Pro Bowl has gotten so bad that I don't even think anybody watches it anymore.
Right.
So now they said they're not going to actually hold the game. They'll fill that week with, I forget the exact words, exciting events, I think they called it.
Yeah.
And again, speaking from a Patriots standpoint, they don't want to see any of those exciting events because they had a rookie running back rush for 1,000 yards in I think it was 98. Robert Edwards. He went to the Pro Bowl and take part in a beach volleyball game, and he blew out his knee. His leg almost had to get amputated for that. And he never played again.
You know what? I know who you're talking about. I'm fighting with the name, but I know exactly what. Yeah, there was a player that went in there, blew out his name, playing beach volleyball. That's too bad, too, for a business trip to end so badly in Hawaii. Oh, my goodness. Is it Mike Cumry or Tim Cumry?
Tim Cumry snapped his leg in the Super Bowl. He was with the Bengals.
Right. Okay. Oh, it's him in the Super Bowl. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know there was an incident that happened on the beach for beach volleyball.
Yeah, it was Robert Edwards.
Oh, it was Robert Edwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, a bold game and an injury, a big one. But nevertheless, I can understand. I mean, I've been to a Pro Bowl game myself once when it was in Miami. They had it during the week leading up to the Super Bowl. So at least I can say I got that off my bucket list for sure. I don't think the NFL would ever have a problem issuing a press credential for that, but so they won't be getting one for me anytime. So
and a trip to Hawaii would be nice, though.
Hawaii's a great place. Been there twice, that's for sure. But if it's an all-expense paid trip, nothing wrong with that for sure.
No, especially if someone's picking up the dime.
No, exactly. That's my point. So anyways, let's talk about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl moved to 2025 in New Orleans. Mardi Gras, there's a conflict in 24. We know that Mardi Gras rules in the Big East, doesn't it?
Hey, the city of New Orleans knows where their bread is buttered. And, I've been to New Orleans. I've never been to Mardi Gras. That's something that I should probably do once in my lifetime. But that's a crazy place down there. I can only imagine what it's like during Mardi Gras. But, Mardi Gras rules down there.
Yeah, I've been in New Orleans quite a few times. I actually went there for the 1982 Final Four when Michael Jordan was there, and North Carolina beat Georgetown. Unbelievable. I saw a game over at the Super Dome is what I did. And gone to the Lions games there. You got to go there, folks. Obviously, you know about Bourbon Street, but Pat O'Brien's makes the best hurricanes on the planet. Tell you stories back in the day when I was a young pup. I don't care if you're a young pup or an old pup, okay? to me, those Pat O'Brien Hurricanes, I hate to say, are to die for, but they are. They sneak up on you really, really. But yeah, you're right. Mardi Gras King, the Super Bowl gets shoved back a year. What's the difference? New Orleans has hosted enough of those Super Bowls to begin with.
Exactly. They've had plenty.
So let's stay on the Louisiana theme for a moment. The New Orleans Saints are thinking about wanting to play games over at LSU to get some fans because New Orleans is not, the city is not going to let them do it. So,
Right. And, you know, that's such a big home field advantage for them, too, when they play in the Dome. That place gets rocking. And the people there, it's like, I mean, it's like going to a Jimmy Buffett concert. You know, everybody dresses up, and it's just a wild place. And they've lost a little bit of that because, I mean, the crowd, just like in Seattle, that's such a big part of their home field advantage down there. I mean, they're still a very good football team, don't get me wrong, but you know, they lose some of that home field advantage because that place rocks.
let me tell you what, LSU will be gracious enough to take their money knowing that they're taking a hit rate in the checkbook anyways because of COVID-19. So any money that the New Orleans Saints would be more than happy to pay them to play in their stadium, Steve. Mark my word, LSU would be more than happy to cash that check all day long. So we talk about, you mentioned Adam Gase's days being numbered. That's obvious, okay? And the Le'Veon Bell thing didn't help his cause any. But a guy that doesn't have any more weeks is Dan Quinn, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I remember today, I believe it was on that showed with Zubin Mehenti, Keyshawn Johnson, and Jay Williams. They had Rich McKay, the general manager for the Falcons. And Raheem Morris has a chance to really legitimately audition for this job with 11 games to go to get this team. You can't, you know, I mean, I don't know whether you're a big fan or not of, you know, mid-season firings with an interim, but this is this guy has a chance to get the job if he can breathe a little bit of life into that team, especially since they had a couple of games that they should have won.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that Dan Quinn had lost the locker room. That loss at Dallas was brutal. I mean, they were up, you know, by what, 25 points, I think it was at one point. And
Right.
then that onside kick where they're running beside the ball, and I'm watching that ball spin around. It's like, why doesn't somebody jump on it?
Right.
You know, and to lose like that is just awful. And, you know, that team seemed like a couple of years ago, that team seemed primed to be going in the right direction for a long time. And I think that Super Bowl loss where, again, they blew a 25-point lead to the Patriots, I think that really affected that entire team. It affected their psyche. It affected their coaching staff because they've never really been the same.
Right.
Excuse me, since.
Well, yeah, you're right. They haven't recovered. It didn't help that Kyle Shanahan got a head job over the San Francisco 49ers. And then they bring in Steve Sarkisian, who's the worst offensive coordinator on the planet. And he wasn't able to make the most out of Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, to name a few others. So you're right. They never did recover from it. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I wish Raheem Morris well. They won't. One thing about him, though, is they won't have to worry about the Rooney Rule. You know, he definitely.
He does well. Yeah, he's in. If he does well, he's in. I mean, they don't.
Right.
So.
He won't pull him at Millen where you get charged a couple $100,000 there to not, you know, go ahead and enforce the rule. But I wish Raheem Morris well. He's a good, you know, he previously coached the Tampa Bay Bucks. So it's not like he hadn't had any head coaching experience, but he's got a lot of time to prove what he can do. So, all right, let's talk about last week's key games, okay, Steve? Thursday night, Chicago Bears came back to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks 20-19. Some observations on that.
Yeah, you know, I watched that game, and you know, the Bears' defense is tough. They have a really good defense, and I thought that Nick Foles played well, but the big story for that one was all the penalties that the Tampa offensive line got. It seemed like every time they had the ball, their offensive line was getting 1 or 2 penalties. And it was like, my goodness. They were at one point, I think they had got the ball in Chicago territory, and the next thing you know, it's like 2nd and 37, and they're back in their own, end of the field. It was amazing. And if I'm Bruce Arians, I mean, okay, 1 or 2, yeah, it's going to happen during the course of a game. And sometimes they can be really, especially if you're dealing with like a holding or whatever call. Some of those can be kind of ticky-tack. But this was like so many, and they were just mental mistakes. And then the one guy, like, well after the play, headbutts another guy. What are you guys thinking about? I mean, that to me goes to coaching. And I thought they failed there.
Well, Tom Brady didn't do himself any favors either with that down situation that he misjudged.
Now he's getting he's getting like the Joe Biden jokes that, oh, he's senile, he can't remember what down it is. I can honestly say, though, I've never seen Tom Brady do that. So, I've never seen him forget the down. That's a first. So.
Well, he's got a bigger microscope on him, Steve. Think about it. You go to Tampa, and all of a sudden, you're the guy going in there with all the hype and the expectations, and he figures earning all this money, and I'm trying to outdo Bill Belichick, and all of a sudden, you talk about a microscope that's big. Tom Brady definitely has a huge microscope. And it looks like Tampa, I think, had a 13-0 lead at some point in that game, and then the Bears came back, and Nick got the last laugh over Tom Brady as he did before.
Yeah, I thought Foles played well. He had his moments where he looked really sharp, and he had his moments where he wasn't. But that's going to happen with a guy on a new team, with a lot of new players. I thought Allen Robinson had a really strong game for Chicago. Hey, I thought it was a good football game. I think Chicago made the right move and switching out Foles for Trubisky. And we'll see if, with that defense, that offense of theirs doesn't have to be great. It just has to be okay, and They can be a playoff team.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, but think about it. You're Nick Foles. You beat Tom Brady on a national stage last week, and then you beat him in the Super Bowl. How many guys can actually say that they've been able to master Tom Brady on a couple of occasions, but Nick Foles can at least claim to that?
Peyton Manning's probably the only one that can say that. So.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I mean, he lost his fair share of battles against Brady.
Oh, yeah.
But Nick Foles hadn't played him much, and he's gotten the best of him a couple of times. So more power to him. All right, let's talk about the Houston Texans 30, the Jaguars 14. Romeo Crennel is just babysitting for a while, but he got to win, something that Bill O'Brien didn't do this year anyways. Jaguars. So your thoughts about that? They rallied around Romeo.
They did rally around Romeo. It seemed like they had a little extra pep in their step. I think that a lot of the veterans there were just tired of the losing that they had been, because there's no way that team should have been 0-4. I mean, There's no way. I mean, you can make the argument, yeah, they could lose some because they played a couple of tough games, but there's no way that team should have been 0-4. And they finally played the way they're capable of playing. I thought Deshaun Watson had a pretty good game. J.J. Watt had that jump in his step, which he always does. But, it just looked like a really good team win for them. And, I think, and we said this last week right here on the show, I think Romeo is going to deliver some short-term, success for that team. I don't think he's the long-term answer. We'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out, but he's a really good defensive coordinator, really smart. I just don't think he's a great head coach. Yeah, and he's 74 years old now, too. So.
Yeah, but who's to say, they bring in a new head coach and they may want to keep him around for a couple of years as defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would, if Romeo wants to come back and coach the defense, I would definitely do that.
I wouldn't think twice about it either. So Romeo Crennel, I mean, right now, he can even muster up a 500 season on his own. More power to him,
Yeah.
considering what they're going through. Next game we're going to talk about is the one that's shocked probably every one of us, Las Vegas Raiders, and I have to get used to that, Steve.
Yes.
Beat the Kansas City Chiefs 40-32. They did something that the LA Chargers didn't do, and when they went ahead and went for it on fourth down, they converted, where the Chargers were a little more passive here. So got to hand it to the Raiders and John Gruden for being able to beat Kansas City in their own playpen.
Yes. And, is there a bigger enigma in the NFL than the Raiders? Because you watched them against the Chiefs last week. They looked outstanding. I mean, yeah, they gave up quite a few points, but lots of teams give up a lot of points to the Chiefs. I mean, that's a really potent offense. But that Raiders offense on Sunday, they just looked incredible. And then when that game came right down to the end, it looked like the Chiefs were making a move. They had that 4th and 1. And I was thinking to myself, if you punt that ball back, you're going to lose. And if you lose by going for it, then you can live with that because you went for the win. You didn't just go with the conventional thinking there. And I thought that was the smart move, was to go for it. Yeah, it's risky, but I mean the way they had been moving the ball all day, there's no way they shouldn't have got that 1 yard. So, and good for them. They held on to the ball for the last, it was like, I think 4.5 minutes or something close to that. And, they were able to close it out, but Kansas City's defense has been playing real well this year, and they lit them up all game long.
Wow, I'll tell you, Josh Jacobs had a pretty good game. I think Henry Ruggs, did he catch a touchdown too?
Yes, Henry Ruggs he's going to be good. Oh, yeah. That kid's going to be good.
Well,
I loved watching him in college.
Yeah, I saw him beat the Wolverines over in Orlando, and Jerry Judy's another stud. So
yeah,
University of Alabama may be having Nick Saban sit for a little while, but Jerry Judy and Henry Ruggs, I believe Jerry Judy's from Deerfield Beach High School locally. So, and Deerfield Beach High School has definitely produced a lot of good pros.
Yeah, and it seems like Alabama is like Pittsburgh. They're just coming up with one wide receiver after another. The Steelers, it seems like they always draft some kid that no one's heard of, and next thing you know, he's lighting it up, right, in the NFL. And none of them are first-round draft picks. And but Alabama has a couple of kids down there right now. I watched their game last week against Ole Miss, and anyway, we're getting into college ball, but Jerry Judy and Henry Ruggs, both of those guys can absolutely fly when they get the ball in their hand.
Well, some universities are known for putting out certain positions, so let's not kid ourselves. I mean, Miami Hurricanes for a lot of years produced quarterbacks.
Oh yeah.
I know. What was it? University of Pittsburgh, or was it Penn State? Linebacker U.
Linebackers, yeah, Penn State.
Right. So you have a lot of places that can produce positions. I don't know if it's by coincidence or whether it's by, but who knows? But those two kids are going to be great, players for a long, long time for sure. All right, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. Walked into Santa Clara and dropped the hammer on the 49ers. That's the most points ever against the 49ers in Santa Clara, and the Miami Dolphins did it with Ryan Fitzpatrick having one of the better games than Jimmy Garoppolo. I guess they sat him down, and for the second half. He wasn't doing anything anyhow, so they had to get back in sync. So how about what the Dolphins did?
I think, it was funny. About a week ago, Fitzpatrick had a kind of a bad game, and a lot of people were openly clamoring for Tua. And then Fitzpatrick goes out there and just lights up the 49. For most of the game, he had a perfect quarterback rating. Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. He is the streakiest guy in the world. And when he gets in a bad streak, he's pretty horrible. And they showed that graphic in, I think they said in losses, he had, or in wins, he had like 107 touchdowns and like 27 interceptions. And then in losses, he had like 102 touchdowns and 100 and something interceptions. And it's like, that's that streakiness. And on Sunday, he was the hot streak. And when he gets like that, he's as good as anybody. I mean, when he's feeling it and he's got that, he was putting the ball in tight places. He had a great feel for the offense. And I really, the last couple of years, I've been really rooting for him because, he knows he's one game away from being replaced for good. And he knows his career's, he's playing with house money right now. And he's just loving it. And I don't think he feels any pressure whatsoever. He's just going out there and playing well. And he had a tremendous football game on Sunday.
Well, what about what he did on Thursday night game against the Jacksonville Jaguars? He took that streakiness and lit him up.
Yeah.
Big field. So
the hot Fitzy, man.
He's a Harvard guy. What do you expect? Not like those guys
with that beard out to here, he looks like, he should be on WWE.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, that beard is classic. And with all due respect to Fitzpatrick, he may think he's going to play away, but I don't think Brian Flores is thinking that way. He's looking to buy as much time to keep Tua on the bench as he can. I don't think you have a much better option than Fitzpatrick. He certainly found a niche over there. So ideally, I think Miami would love to keep Tua, holding a clipboard for this year, maybe even next year if they can get away with it.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think I mentioned it here a week or two ago. I read something after their game against the Jaguars where one of the younger guys on the team was saying that they all race to the offensive meetings because everyone wants to sit next to Fitzpatrick. They believe in this guy. They like him. They think he's a good leader. They know he's been in the league a long time. He has a lot of experience. He's played on bad teams. So, he knows what it's like and he can guide these guys. And, I just think he's very comfortable right now where he's at. I think Brian Flores really likes him. And he continues to play like that. Dolphins are going to win a bunch of football games.
Well, I'll tell you what, a year ago when they brought in Josh Rosen to compete with Fitzpatrick, and a lot of people thought Josh would have the full-time gig, but that didn't work out. Fitzpatrick outplayed him. Josh Rosen is now up in Tampa, and Tua is waiting in the wings. So, you're right. This guy has seen a lot of football. He's played a lot of football, and as I said, he's in a good spot with the Dolphins, and the 49ers and the Jaguars found out how tough this guy is. And you can only imagine what's going to happen during the course of the year. So let's go ahead and talk about the Indianapolis Colts and the Cleveland Browns. I'm buying the Cleveland Browns Kool-Aid right now.
Yeah. Well, and again, you talk about a streaky team. When they put it all together, I mean, that team has a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. And when they play like that, they look incredibly good. And Sunday was one of those games. And for them, I think the biggest question is just consistency. Can they keep doing it week after week? Last week against Indy, I thought they looked really, really good. I watched. I didn't watch the game live. I watched it later on the NFL Game Pass, and that running game of theirs is legit. Baker Mayfield's playing real well. I mean, they have the playmakers, and if I'm the Indianapolis Colts, I'm starting to worry a little bit about Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I would too. All right, let's talk about the Giants and Cowboys. Dak Prescott rolled up a lot of yards, and for long he rolled up an ankle, and oh my goodness! So,
I have a lot of family members down in the Dallas region, so I'll have to put my cowboy hat on here.
There you go. Well, you got your cowboy hat on, and I got my Super Bowl hat. So
there you go. So talking about Dak, and that was horrible. It was a gruesome injury, and your heart just goes out for a guy like that because I mean, you hate seeing that on in any kind of game. It's just watching his leg pointing in the wrong direction is just, you know. And he's been playing incredibly well, and now he's gone for the season. But the problem with them hasn't been their offense or him; it's been their defense. And the Giants were matching them right up until the end of the game there, and they Andy Dalton put together a really nice drive. They made a couple of nice throws and catches there, and they were able to win that football game. But the problem with Dallas isn't going to be their offense. I think Andy Dalton can run that offense well enough that they'll win their share of football games, and especially in that division. I think going 9-7 will win you that division, I think. But that defense of theirs I think they need a lot of work.
Well, you know what? I told you this earlier today. When the Cowboys inked Dalton, that seemed like I thought Jimmy Johnson was the general manager, because I think Jerry Jones would make a move like that. Those are moves that Jimmy Johnson makes. But Andy Dalton's a good quarterback. Don't sell this guy short. He took the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs. I think the only reason why the Bengals never won in the playoffs because of Marvin Lewis. But Andy Dalton playing in his home area right down the road from TCU. So he's a Texas kid. I've always liked Andy Dalton as a quarterback. And at one point or another, I thought the Patriots would go after him. But
well, they didn't seem interested in him. And I don't know why, but he's been one of those guys that kind of on the cusp of being, a really good quarterback. I totally agree with what you were saying. Because you always look at those Bengals teams, and it seemed like every year people say, Bengals have a lot of talent. The Bengals have, and they did, and they never won a playoff game. And I think it goes to coaching. I think Andy Dalton's going to be real happy there, because now, with Dak out, he's going to be the guy for the rest of the season. And they have some good weapons on that offense. I mean, you got Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
I mean, you can lean on that running game. The one question about Dallas, they've always had that really good offensive line. Their offensive line isn't that good so far this year. And, that's something, again, it'll be something that needs to be worked on. But if I'm Andy Dalton, I mean, I don't like the circumstances that I'm becoming the starting quarterback, but at the same time, I'm liking life right now. You're playing in Dallas. You have a lot of talented players around you, and you're playing in a division where you have the opportunity to go into the playoffs quite easily, I think.
And you're destined to get a raise after this year. Dallas is going to have to either pay to keep you, or somebody's going to say, this guy can still play. Mm-hmm. And to me, you know what? Things work out in this league for different reasons. We all get that, you know what I mean? But when you look at Andy Dalton, he won't have a problem landing a starting job. I think Dallas got a team-friendly contract that was incentive-laden. And
yep.
You know what? More power to him. There are nobody rooting harder for Andy Dalton than I am, because I want to see him do well there. I really, really do. So let's go down to New Orleans. We talked about it earlier. And the Chargers lose to the New Orleans Saints 30-27. That took overtime to decide. But you had Justin Herbert, who's actually taken over for Phillip Rivers with the Chargers. And Justin Herbert, you talk about the upside of this guy. It's unbelievable.
I know it. And, it's like, I was talking with someone the other day, and I mentioned it to you earlier today, offline. Is there a more impressive quarterback who started his career 0-4 as a rookie than Justin Herbert? Because they've lost all those games. But he's played incredibly well. He threw 4 touchdowns on Monday night against the Saints. And, I mean, I wasn't, it was funny. A lot of people pegged him for the Patriots, that they were going to move up and try to grab him. And I wasn't into that at all. I wasn't impressed with this guy. And I was like, I don't want him. I don't. And I'm regretting saying that now, because this kid can play. I mean, he's only a rookie. he's still learning on the job. But boy, he can spin it, and he has a good eye for what's in front of him. He knows when it's time to tuck the ball and run. A couple of times he does make those rookie mistakes where he tries to squeeze the ball into too tight of a spot, but that'll come with experience. He's going to learn that. I just think he's really, really impressive, and obviously Anthony Lynn and the Chargers feel that way too, because he said that's our quarterback.
Well, not like the University of Oregon has produced a bunch of marquee quarterbacks like Joey Harrington and Achilles Smith, who would tend to believe that, they have a reputation. Well, these guys are good in college. I mean, it translates to the pros. But Justin Herbert, and I've always maintained, I don't think Joey Harrington was a bust. When you go ahead and go through head coaching, head coaches and offensive coordinators year in and year out, and you have to learn a new playbook. But that'll be for another conversation. But Justin Herbert, to me, and I'm not going to buy into the Kool-Aid here that, Miami would have been better off taking Herbert over Tua, because both, we haven't seen what Tua's going to do on the field. So
right.
That's something that's a TBD for TUA. But for at least the Chargers, you go from Rivers to Herbert. How many teams have to go 20 or 30 quarterbacks until they find their next guy? And in the case of Indianapolis, when they went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, and now you go with the Chargers where you got Rivers over to Justin Herbert. Sometimes you're fortunate to get it right and you don't have to wait quite as long. I mean, another scenario there would have been you have Brett Favre paving way for Aaron Rodgers, but it doesn't always work out that way. But nevertheless, I think the future is bright for the Chargers for sure, and there's no shame in losing an overtime game to New Orleans.
Especially down there in the dome.
Exactly. Fans or no fans, obviously, to me, New Orleans is tough to beat at Superdome. All right, we'll talk about what our last game of last week, and then we look ahead. The Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are the Miami Marlins of the NFL with all those outbreaks. But meanwhile, they look pretty good with all that time off. And I got to hand it to Mike Vrabel. He stands behind his team and goes to bat for them, and they didn't let him down, because think about it, Derrick Henry flattened Josh Norman.
That's going to be on everyone's Twitter account for months. I mean, yeah. That was a stiff arm to end all stiff arms. He lifted him right off the ground and then just planted him. It's funny because without them practicing for 2 weeks, and it was like actually more than 2 weeks, and they only had 2 practices and I think a walkthrough before this game. I picked Buffalo to win this game because I just thought the rust factor was going to be there for them, and their timing would be off. And boy, they came out. They played a tremendous football game, and Josh Allen has been playing tremendous himself since last year. They had him all discombobulated all night long. He was thrown into double and triple coverage. He had a couple of interceptions. He could have had about 2 or 3 more that, guys from the Titans dropped. I just thought it was a tremendous football game for Mike Vrabel and the Titans. Though to win and the way that they won that game, I thought it was really, really impressive. And, they have a tough football team. They can run the ball. They can throw it. Their quarterback can run. And he's another guy. Tannehill's, when he gets on a hot streak, he's very impressive. He's another guy. It's with him. It's not the ability. I think it's the consistency. Can he do?
Right. Ryan Tannehill struggled with injury concerns. And again, the Miami Dolphins being good, so he's a benefit of a change of scenery. But it doesn't hurt that you have Derrick Henry in your backfield either. And your boy Malcolm Butler made a big defensive play as well, from what I heard. So.
He had 2 interceptions. The second one, he tried to run it back, and it looked like he was going to get about a 10 or 15-yard interception return. Then he started running backwards. It looked like he was going to get caught minus 10 from where he had been, and then he took off and he was cutting like Barry Sanders and going against the grain. He ended up returning at 60 yards. And I thought that was a huge point in the game at that point because it was still kind of nip and tuck a little bit. And I thought that was a huge turning point in the game. And it started to all go downhill for the Titans after that.
Well, you're right. Josh Allen looked awfully good going in, but, battle of unbeatens. And when you look at the odds, and I like to talk about the Miami Marlins / Tennessee Titans going through adversity with all these outbreaks, but they rallied. They used it as a unifying cry to themselves, and the coach was behind them. Vrabel taking over for Doc Mattingly, the Miami Marlins and the Tennessee Titans. But when they finally did get back on the field, they didn't win. They looked good doing it. That's what they did.
Yeah, they were very impressive. And, I mean, if you're the Titans, you have to feel really good about yourselves after that game. Because now, you were basically out of your building for 2 weeks.
Right.
You come back in, you're facing an unbeaten team that has been rolling, and you just kick the snot out of them, on national television. And now, if I'm that team, there's nothing that I'm worried about in the next couple of weeks where, I think if you're them, we've faced the fire, we've faced adversity, and now we're just going to play our game, and people are going to have to beat us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing fantasy football, but for those individuals that have Ryan Tannehill, I'll tell you what, he's in the right system with the right coach. Again, it's okay to have a fresh start and look really good doing it, and that's exactly what's happening. All right, well, let's transition over to this week's game. I have to lead off with the game, Steve, that I will be covering, okay? The Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, Matt Patricia and Doug Marrone. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when both of these guys go. But I'm wondering whether Doug Marrone will even I don't, for some crazy reason, since Jacksonville's the youngest team in the league, or one of the youngest, whether Marrone can even extend beyond this year. Matt Patricia, we've spoken about this quite a bit. He's on borrowed time.
Yes, he is. And he's underwhelmed there, and I think he's underperformed. I think they have some talent on that team. They should be winning more games than they are. And this will be a big week for them because this is a game they can win. I mean, it's not like they're playing the Packers in Lambeau.
Right.
This is a game they can win. This is a game they probably should win.
Well, they're favored. So, and we'll see whether or not another double-digit lead that they give up. I mean, it's there for the Lions, but for them to lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars, boy, I'll tell you what, you absorbed the New Orleans loss, okay? That wasn't good. The Packers loss was bad. You win with the Cardinals, and then, but to me, to lose to Jacksonville, when you have Matthew Stafford facing Gardner Minshew, they lose there. I personally thought that Patricia should have been fired during the bye week. But we'll see. This is a game.
If they lose this week, the calls for his hide are going to increase.
Oh, yeah.
Tenfold.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that. Well, I guarantee we'll be talking about this game on our next broadcast.
Yeah. And have fun there. I want to hear from you of how the Jaguars are handling all the COVID, precautions and protocols and all that. Because I've heard from some of the guys in Foxborough and how they're doing it up there. I know the league is trying to keep it, uniform, but that's one of the things we'll definitely talk about next week.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, I've already got the regulations of what we're allowed to do. There won't be any locker room access from what I've been told. So everything will be done up in the press box. They have to leave the stadium by 8 o'clock. So those are some of the things that we'll be doing. But of course, hey, listen, I'm not afraid to text you or contact you even during the week, my friend.
Yeah.
As I did over at our favorite restaurant.
That's true.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about you, Steve. Don't worry. But yeah,
Hey, and I appreciate that fact,
of course. That's what co-hosts and friends are for, right, pal?
Absolutely.
But it'll be interesting. I mean, Adrian Peterson against the Jaguars. But if they lose to Jacksonville, you know, you're right. It will.
I think that would be the final nail for Patricia.
I think so too.
If they win and they play well this week, it won't lessen what he's looking at in the offseason, but it will calm the voices down, at least for the time being.
Yeah, a week.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
It's a week to week business.
Well, yeah, as we've already found out the last 2 weeks with O'Brien and then Quinn. But meanwhile, but let's not kid yourself though. James Robinson, the undrafted free agent for Jacksonville, this kid's a young stud. So I'll be interesting to see how the Lions rush defense handles James Robinson. Because Kamara, although Alvin Kamara eats everybody up alive, but Robinson could make the Lions' job a little bit more difficult for sure. All right, so we'll talk about, we mentioned the Green Bay Packers. This is a matchup that used to be in the NFC North. Green Bay Packers against the Tampa Bay Bucks, so the Battle of the Bees. This one out in Tampa. Now, if they allowed it fans, you wouldn't have a problem. Raymond James would be sold out for this, but unfortunately, they're not. Old division rivals. This is the second week in a row that the Bucks have faced an old divisional foe with the Bears last week. What do you expect out of the Packers and the Bucks?
I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I look for this one to be one of those whoever has the ball last kind of games.
Right.
And and again, if you have a 2-point lead and you have the ball down on the other team's end and you have a 3rd or 4th and 1, don't kick that field goal with 2 minutes to go, because you'll end up, you kick that field goal up by 2 and you'll end up losing by 2, because that's always the way that works. I look for a really entertaining game. Rodgers is playing lights out. Hopefully some of the guys from Tampa will start coming back, some of their skilled players who've been banged up, and will start playing, healing up and playing for them. But I look for a good, high-scoring, entertaining, one of those, don't get up out of your chair and go get another beer because you might miss something.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to see that game at, whether I'll be over in the Jaguars press box, although we'll be probably doing a lot of virtual press conferences when we're up there. But my wife, though, won't be credentialed for it. They're not allowing her, so I'm acting solo, although she's taking a trip up to Jacksonville with me. But yeah, you're right. It could be a shootout in the making, that's for sure. I think the key is the Buccaneers need Leonard Fournette in the worst way.
Yes. And, he's a guy that if you get a lead in the second half, he can close the deal for you.
Oh, yeah.
He can start chewing up big chunks of yardage, eating up the clock. And then, what it ends up doing is it opens up play action for you. Big plays will start happening if Fournette starts getting big chunks of yards, because those linebackers and safeties have to start cheating up to help out and run support. And that's when smart quarterbacks like Brady and Rodgers, that's what they do. When they see that happening, they'll bait you into coming up one time too many. And, then you end up giving up that big play.
Yeah, well, that's true. Like you say, Fournette, I like him as a back. Again, his exit at Jacksonville wasn't really what most people thought, but to me, I'd take a Leonard Fournette on my team all day long. I wouldn't think twice about it. All right, well, we talked about the Chicago Bears. Now we get to do it again, and they're facing a Carolina Panthers, which is 3-2 with Teddy Bridgewater as their quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey not in the lineup.
Yeah, I think this is, the Panthers are playing pretty good football, and Teddy Bridgewater is playing quite well. A lot of people are chalking this one up to Chicago right away because of that defense. I'm not going to jump on that all the way. I mean, could the Bears win? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm not closing the book on this Panthers team right now. I mean, it's going to depend on how it all plays out. I think situational football will be big in this one. Turnovers will be huge in this one. You know, I don't think either team can afford to give up those, easy possessions or easy points where you give up a interception or a fumble deep in your own zone. That'll be a killer in this one. But I'm going for the upset this week. I'm going for the Carolina Panthers.
I would do that too. Joe Brady obviously was the brain child over at LSU. They brought him over. Matt Rule is the king of turning programs around. If you want evidence of that, go to Temple and then go to Baylor and then talk to me. Because this guy here, whatever he gets on, he turns it into gold and knows what he has to do. And I tell you what, I think Matt Rule is a heck of a hire out in Charlotte for sure. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning more toward the Panthers as well. They're at home. Again, it's not a matter of home field advantage. The only thing home does is you don't have to travel and leave other than fans. All right, we got a few more games we want to get to. Atlanta Falcons 0-5 against the Minnesota Vikings 1-4. Why would I even be bringing this game up?
Well, somebody's got to win this. And, looking at Raheem Morris, I mean, we talked about that a lot of times, that short-term, boost that a new coach will bring in. I think he's going to bring that this week.
Mm-hmm.
I like Atlanta in this game. I think, they need to get the offense going, Matt Ryan going. I've never been the biggest Matt Ryan fan, but, he's another guy. When he's on top of his game, he's really, really good. But I just think that they needed this change. It's kind of seemed like it's been getting stale there for a while. I look for the Falcons to put together a really good game this week, and I think they're going to win.
Yeah, well, I think they rallied behind Raheem Morris, just like the Texans rallied around Romeo Crennel. That's the only reason I brought this game in. So, The new coach, how they respond, instant gratification, you know where that story goes. Okay, we'll talk about, I think, the game of the week, the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miles, they had that big fight last year with, was it Mason Rudolph? And Myles Garrett cost him the rest of the year. But Myles Garrett, to me, is one of the better defensive players in the league. And you would think he's learned from what happened a year ago, and the Browns, to me, are looking pretty good.
This is going to be a really good game. That rivalry, that Ohio, Pennsylvania thing anyway. And
the tournament battle.
Oh, yeah. And, because it's a divisional game, those two teams naturally don't like each other.
Right.
So it's going to be a hard-hitting. It's not going to be for the faint of heart. I think it's going to be one of those, a mix of grind it out and big plays. And both teams are capable of doing that. I like the Steelers in this one. I know the Browns are playing well. But I like the Steelers in this one to pull out another close win.
No, I'm going to differ with you on this. I'm going to give Cleveland the benefit of the doubt so that we'll have one of us is going to be right, one of us will be wrong next week. So I'll jump on the Cleveland bandwagon this week and see where we go with that. They're a team that's on a mission, and they haven't. The last time they started 4-1 was when Bill Belichick was the head coach.
I saw that. Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it?
Is it? But they haven't looked bad doing it.
No, but it's just, you know what I mean? It's like Belichick's been with the Patriots for 20 years, and the Browns haven't been 4-1 in over 20 years. It's like, wow.
Well, thanks for making my point. I appreciate it, Steve. But I'm going to go with Cleveland, even though the game's at Pittsburgh. We'll see. So let me ask you, now that we're talking about Pittsburgh, could you ever see Le'Veon Bell returning to Pittsburgh, even though I felt like he burned his bridges out the door?
I think he burned his bridges there too, and I think the Steelers really like James Conner. I don't see them bringing him back. I think for them. When him and Antonio Brown left, I think the Steelers, they were popular in the locker room amongst some players because they're so good at what they do. But I also think they were probably very unpopular with some guys who didn't want to speak up because they're distraction.
Right.
And I think since they've been gone, the Steelers haven't had that. We haven't heard all of those distractions like we were hearing before.
Right.
I think they're concentrating on football. I don't think they bring them.
If you can't play under Mike Tomlin, there's something really wrong.
Tomlin is considered like a player's coach.
Yeah.
And both of those guys, push the buttons with him once too many.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the Denver Broncos at New England Patriots. We've seen before, but we didn't do it with Cam Newton under signal, so we can change our pick if we want to, knowing that the narrative is going to be different. Now I'm definitely going to go with the New England Patriots as long as Cam Newton's under center.
Yeah, Newton's under center. Stephon Gilmore's supposed to be back as well. So now both their top offensive and defensive player there. They've been running the ball. They're second in the league running the football this year. So, and Denver's getting back Philip Lindsay, and Drew Lock should play in this game. I think it's going to be a good game, but I think this is a game New England wins by about 10.
Yeah, me too. Again, if you had the Stidham-Hoyer combination, like we
wouldn't be
would
going
have had, and I give Denver the game, but knowing that Cam Newton, and I don't think he'll have any problem getting in sync, then I think he'll get in sync right away. So 2 more games. Since there is no Thursday night one, let's go to Monday Night Football or Monday afternoon football. You have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. You said that was originally scheduled, I think, for tomorrow night, and that'll be 5 o'clock on Monday. So who do you have in this one?
I like Kansas City in this one because Buffalo's defense now, that's been their strength, for the past 3 or 4 years. Buffalo's defense has been really, really good. They haven't been playing well this year, and I know they've had some injuries.
Right.
But they haven't been that same unit. And we saw, Tennessee scored 42 points on them, and they're missing their best cornerback. And now you're going to play, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the Chiefs in this one. I do. I think, especially after last week, I think Mahomes and crew, they're going to come out with the fire, under their butt, and I think they're going to play real, real well.
Yeah, you're going to be looking at a very angry Kansas City Chiefs team. They were exposed. They were exposed even with the Chargers, but when the Raiders finished them off. Now this team realized we're not going undefeated all year, and if we continue to play this poorly on defense, other teams will devise schemes to go out there and try to solve the Chiefs. But I agree with you. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be angry, and the Buffalo Bills are going to take it right on the chin again. And our last game that we're going to talk about will be the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys at 8:15 Eastern Time. Some thoughts?
I like this. I think this is going to be entertaining because, as we said earlier, Dallas's defense, they haven't been playing well. And that's been, I think, their Achilles heel. You have a really good offense coming in. I think this is going to be one of those games. Again, it's going to be a high-scoring affair. And you mentioned earlier, you like Andy Dalton being at home back in Texas. I think he's going to have a comfort level in this offense already where, he's going to be lighting it up himself. I think this is going to be a real high-scoring affair. I got Dallas eking this one out.
I do too. Now, if for some crazy reason Le'Veon Bell is a Cardinal, then I do have the right to waffle and bite my tongue next week because at least I predicted that Le'Veon Bell would be there. I'm not predicting anything, but I could see if he were in that offense. Well, I think the Cardinals will certainly be even more potent than they are now. But, I'm going with the Cowboys for no other reason. Andy Dalton. Don't underestimate Andy Dalton.
Well, I think, like I said, I think he's going to play well.
Yeah, I do
He's
too.
got a lot of weapons, and they're going to rely on their running game, which is really good. And I think they're going to rally around Andy Dalton. This is a team that really liked. I mean, Dak Prescott had a ton of respect in that locker room, but I think that the players all realize that what happened, and I think they're going to rally around Andy. I do.
I agree. Oh, there's no question about it. Again, Andy Dalton had a good career in Cincinnati. He's on a 1-year contract, so if he can perform well for Dallas, then I think that even though you hate to see Dak Prescott go down to an injury, it's too bad. And it reminds me of a point that I probably have mentioned from time to time. I've been at games where careers are ended then. So, for example, I mean, I remember, I think I mentioned to you, I was at the Chuck Hughes game many years when I was 8. I saw Jerry Ball sustain a severe injury because of a chop block. Reggie Brown, formerly of Texas A&M, and of course I was at Mike Utley. So, those are all bad those are examples of how tough the NFL is and the physicality that you have. So, I mean, I think the only thing people wonder about with Dak Prescott is, will Jerry Jones pay him his money despite the injury? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
I think he's going to be rewarded with a new contract this year. I do. They might franchise him to start, but they're going to come to an agreement. I think Jerry Jones has to look at, I mean, he was lighting it up this year. I mean, every game.
Oh, yeah.
They lost some of those games, but it wasn't because of the offense and Dak. It was because of the defense. And I think they're smart enough to know that this kid he can play. And I think he has a firm grasp on that team and that locker room, and the players believe in him. And that's something you can't buy and you can't teach. Either a guy has it or he doesn't.
Well, I can't imagine Jerry Jones paying the franchise tag number of $38 million next year, much less during a COVID-19 year where the salary cap is going to drop. So I think COVID-19 might end up being a friend for Dak Prescott and will force Jerry Jones to do what he's got to do. Or
I agree.
$38 million, and then go figure. So, well, I think we've covered a lot, don't you, Steve?
Absolutely. As always, my friend.
Okay, well, guess what? Now you can take over the broadcast and let everybody know how they can reach you. And then I'll go ahead and mention a couple things here, and we go from there.
All right, great. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Although I don't do Instagram too much, that's something I guess I need to start using more of. I write for PatsFans.com. I also write for a military site called SoftRep.com. And I do podcasts for the Patriots 4th and 2. And we're doing a video podcast like this tomorrow. So that should be interesting. We'll be talking more about the Patriots and Broncos game again, but this time there'll be some changes, obviously. So, but as always, my friend, I enjoy our time here. The hours always fly by, and it seemed like we just started, and we've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's normal for us. I make sure that we have a lot of ground, but we have a responsibility, though, Steve, to make sure for those of our fans that are listening that we give them everything they need to know, information and insights. And I believe that I don't care what the time is because we're not leaving anything out that I don't think support. I've been covering this league for since 1982, a lot. So I know exactly what I feel I have to talk about. And obviously we covered a lot of ground, this time a lot of games. And I'm looking forward to going up to Jacksonville to see the Detroit Lions and the Jaguars. I mean, when you're a creature of habit and you go into a press box, you know what it's like to be in there. It's something that you really can never have enough of because, it's good for us. This is what we do. We cover these things and we inform people. So, but, again, I got to tell you, before you and I went on, Today, remember Mark Littell, the former pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals and the Kansas City Royals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a guest on the Sports Exchange earlier tonight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Mark and I have been good friends for a while. So, like I said, I enjoy this platform, and it's great to be able to see the individuals for whom I'm working with. With that,
Absolutely.
if you want to listen to the audio version of the Sports Exchange with myself and Steve Balestrieri, you can do so at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. I'll say it again. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In terms of social media, you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's the @ Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune is where you'll find us there. Our YouTube channel for what you're seeing this broadcast is Steve Balestrieri and I, the South Florida Tribune. What's great about it is our shows are the Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and Rare, Fantasy Football, and South Florida Tribune Podcast. So not when you subscribe to that one channel, you'll have access to all the shows that we have here. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have the Motor City Monitor on there, which for a lot of our Detroit people that at least this is good for transplants, and the old transplant routine. We have our media distribution partners. We have our columnists and other WSAN dropdown. You can find all the broadcasts there. And our email address is southfloridatribune@gmail.com. So if you want to reach out to Steve and myself or have any comments, questions, or ideas, please don't hesitate to let us know. We'll be more than happy to put them on. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth, and be more than happy to reach out to you. So, Steve, you know what? Once again, a great time to hear tonight, and we'll continue to strive for even greater excellence next Wednesday night. So, but don't worry, I'll be bugging you on next Wednesday with some interesting stuff when it comes my way.
Absolutely, and enjoy the game. Going back up in the press box will be fun, and it should be a good football game. So it should be enjoyable, and just make sure you wear your mask.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game, believe it or not, that was supposed to be played in London. I know the Lions and the Jaguars were talking about putting this game in London, but once again, our friend or enemy, COVID-19, made sure this game wasn't going anywhere. So, but yeah, COVID-19 is definitely a serious thing, and if you want examples, talk to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Nick Saban, and then you realize that this can hit anybody, and when it makes noises louder than an earthquake and more deadly than a hurricane. So if that doesn't emphasize the significance of this, and tell me, I don't know what does.
Absolutely, my friend. And, it's something we all worry about. We've had some family members come down with it. So that's always a worry, especially when you have some older people or people who aren't in the greatest of health that get it. And, we have to take care of ourselves and take care of each other.
So with that said, couldn't have said it better myself. Mask up, everybody. Social distance, common sense. This disease doesn't care who you are. When it gets you, the repercussions are very, very severe. So on behalf of Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange, and we will catch you next week. So have a great weekend, folks, and be safe. Good night.